Welcome, folks. We will begin. We're just going to give some time for some of the folks to join the session. We will start in about 1 minute. Thank you all for your patience and welcome.
Can you see it in your mind? An end to pollution. An America powered by clean energy. It's a country where we breathe cleaner air and we're healthier. Where all Americans live in communities that are safer and built to last. Where wildfires and hurricanes do not cost human lives and billions of dollars every year. Where the sun and the wind power our homes. Clean energy jobs boost our economy. And our bills are cheaper. Where our lives, our work, and our society is shaped to protect us and our planet. Where we use smart investments and new technologies to our greatest advantage. You can see it, right? Now is the time to go all in, to cut global emissions in half by the end of this decade. Now is the time to work together to achieve our vision. America's All In is the largest coalition of leaders ever assembled in support of climate action in the United States. We are already 5,000 members strong and growing, with cities, states, tribal nations, businesses, schools, faith groups, cultural institutions, and healthcare organizations showing what climate action means in our communities. We are committed to accelerating progress towards this sustainable future by showing what going all in means in every corner of America. Standing up for local businesses and community leadership. Fostering collaboration and development of new technologies, championing new ways of investment, celebrating workers and communities as they achieve more. 67% of Americans prioritize developing alternative energy sources like wind and solar. And America's All In is ready to jumpstart this future that we all want to see. It's time to go all in on climate. Will you join us? Visit americasallin.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to All In on Community Benefits. I want to introduce myself to you all. My name is Carlos Clausel, and I serve as the World Wildlife Fund's Climate and Environmental Justice Manager. I'm part of America's All In team. America's All In, as you just heard through our identity video, we are over 5,000 members, and All In is the largest US-based climate coalition and leads a whole of society effort to advance climate action at the subnational, national, and international level. All In partners are influential actors, and All In convenes this group of actors through its platform to advocate for community-led, multi-sector, justice and equity-driven approaches as part of its climate action agenda. All In also convenes state and local governments, private sector, community-based organizations, nonprofits, truly representing that whole of society effort to make sure that the United States and its partners address and tackle climate change and meet our national commitments around climate. Today, as I mentioned, we have the All In on Community Benefits, unlocking climate action benefits for disadvantaged communities. This is a virtual session, and we are joined today by an amazing set of public servants with us representing the Department of Energy. I'm going to introduce them in a little bit, but before that, I want to speak a little bit more about the purpose of this session. We are hosting this session because it is a major component of advancing an equitable renewable energy transition through the Inflation Reduction Act, is also the federal government's commitment on delivering social, economic, and environmental benefits for disadvantaged communities. The Department of Energy has enacted a community benefits criteria within federal climate investments and incentives within IRA and other key federal policies like Justice 40, investing in America's workforce, engaging communities and labor, and advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Entities that seek to access an array or different set of incentives and investments under IRA to advance decarbonization efforts and renewable energy deployment must also facilitate and support the development of community benefit plans and meaningfully engage workforce and community actors, prioritizing disadvantaged communities. A bit of the history of this session, how it came about. This virtual session was a key component of an in-person event that was going to be co-hosted by All In and the Bullard Center for Environmental and Climate Justice in late May. And that session had a focus on community benefits and also supporting a stronger alignment between the community benefits approach coming from the federal government and the climate and environmental justice issues that we are very much aware of. That event had to be postponed because of a storm that hit Houston a couple of days prior to the event in late May. That left about 1 million people in Houston without power. Today, we have attendees from, based on the registration information that we have attendees from 27 different states, representing sectors of clean energy, construction, healthcare, consultant, finance, education, nonprofits, advocacy groups, community-based organizations, and an overall representation of members within All In. We also have attendees representing local, state, and federal governments, including climate mayors, U.S. Climate Alliance, and others. Unfortunately, a big portion of our targeted audience for today can't join us, including one of our speakers, Tom Lewis from the Blue Green Alliance. As you all know, Hurricane Beryl hit Texas yesterday and after impacting the Caribbean, and has left over 3 million people without power in Texas. And unfortunately, some people have lost their lives as part of this event. Just like in May, the Bullard Center's local community partners and constituents in Houston and other regions in Texas are unable to join because they're dealing with a very difficult and life-threatening situation in the aftermath of the hurricane. We are committed and we'll make sure to share all of this information today that we shared today with them, and we will find a suitable date for an in-person event. This is yet another reminder of the urgency we have to advance climate action and to place justice and equity at the forefront of all efforts around addressing the climate crisis. Again, thank you all for being here. I want to introduce our two speakers coming from the Department of Energy. The first speaker today is Sarah Friedman. Sarah Friedman joined the Department of Energy earlier this year in February of 2024. This year, Sarah was brought in by the Undersecretary of Infrastructure to support and improve community benefits commitments as part of the federal programs and criteria under IRA and other related investments and incentives. Sarah started her career as an attorney in private practice at Shadbourne and Park on project finance and development, followed by 8 years at Sierra Club, leading their work on renewable energy siting, including negotiations with developers towards binding negotiated agreements, and more recently at Better World Group Advisors, where she supported coalition and government efforts to achieve community benefits and environmental protections in California. Welcome, Sarah. And we also have Jeremiah Rivera. Jeremiah Rivera serves as an engagement specialist at the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Community Engagement and has nearly 15 years of experience working in state government, local government, and the nonprofit tech sector in Texas and Michigan. Jeremiah's most recent experience involved community and economic development in Houston and San Antonio through local government outreach and nonprofit organization capacity building. Welcome, Jeremiah. It's a pleasure to have you both. and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos, and really honored to be here today. More honor now that I hear about all the participants in the room. As Carlos mentioned, I'm the Community Benefits Advisor for the Undersecretary of Infrastructure, which is a new role for the Undersecretary of Infrastructure. That program is also a new role for the department, so things change very fast. But that role really kind of recognizes the commitment to community benefits across all of our programs. I will, as mentioned, will be joined by my colleague Jeremiah for the second set of the slides. I also want to acknowledge the colleagues who are not here today and the participants that we wish could be here today. And all right. So next slide is the agenda. Okay. So we have a relatively short time here today, and we want to make sure we have some time for questions that have surfaced from the audience previous to this call. So again, we're going to introduce why we're here today, and then I will spend some time going through the community benefits framework, the 4 pillars that are guiding this work. And really spend a good amount of time showing how we actually put that into practice and we implement this into DOE's world, which is essentially one of financial assistance, which is what we call our grant programs. And then spending some time on really how like community fits into community benefits work. So I will share a little bit about some efforts around transparency that we've been leading, and then pass it off to Jeremiah, who will share his work at the Office of Community Engagement, and then various capacity building efforts that are new and really exciting to the department. Next slide, please. This is a really complicated slide, and it's very busy because Department of Energy, like many agencies, uses a lot of highly technical terms. Including some that we have just only recently invented that all seem to use the term community and benefits. So I'm not going to read the whole of this slide, but encourage folks to return back to it. And I will just kind of share some highlights, which are possibly new terms to folks in the audience. One is a funding opportunity announcement. That's what we call a FOA. It's heavily used in the Department of Energy, and it's what we use to solicit research proposals, demonstration and deployment project proposals, et cetera. So it's what we put out. Another term we use a lot is bill and IRA. So these are the 2 bills that really kind of gave us the huge amount of infrastructure funding to really jumpstart our climate work. And then the community benefits plan, which is what we'll spend the majority of time talking about today. And that is a Department of Energy specific application document. We've sort of created this term. It's a term of art, and it is a required part of the technical merit review process for nearly all of our bill and IRA funding opportunity announcements and loan applications. So as we'll discuss in greater detail, there's 4 sections to that: job quality, DEIA, engagement, Justice 40. And that is essentially this application guidance. We also have a term that we call the CBOO. That's the Community Benefit Outcomes and Objectives. And that is a high-level summary of the commitments in our final award that address the 4 community benefit pillars and include high-level commitments, general timeframes, and SMART milestones. We also have a term called community benefit reporting, which is our own project reporting template for how we meet these goals. And then finally, a term that probably more folks are familiar with, the community benefit agreement, which is the legally binding Oh, Okay, let me try. Should I try going off video? Next slide, please. Great. Is that better? Okay, I'll try that for a minute. Okay, so this is a really big slide. Essentially, Congress has given Department of Energy new mandates and unprecedented funding to achieve these outcomes. Here's just some examples of the types of investment coming out of these bills. Each of them has a huge opportunity to create benefits for communities with the right structures and safeguards in place. And I think as we can see, this is a real range. There's big demonstration and deployment projects, new technologies we need to get to scale for climate, existing technologies we're trying to decarbonize. Next slide, please. Great. So this is, the work we're trying to do, really harmed by energy development. This is a big effort. It's a Herculean one. And really, we're doing this by trying to direct project benefits to disadvantaged communities and those who are hosting these projects. So in DOE parlance, we use the term disadvantaged communities to mean those census tracts that are identified by the White House Council for Environmental Quality, known as CGEST tool. This is a mapping tool, as well as all federally recognized tribes. The primary way we're really trying to deliver these benefits, which we'll talk about in detail today, is through this community benefit plan process. And the hope there is that we can use this to really make sure that community benefits can flow to those local and disadvantaged communities hosting the projects. Here's a link to our template. And then the Justice 40 initiative, which is also, kind of working in tandem with the CBP process, which we can get into, really helps to direct that overall benefits of federal investments flow to disadvantaged communities. And that really covers almost all of our projects. And to find out more, we have a link. Next slide, please. Great. So this is just a little bit more detail on how Department of Energy is implementing Justice 40. In 2021, the Office of Management and Budget released an interim implementation guidance for Justice 40, and that's guided the Department of Energy's work on Justice 40. So based on a lot of stakeholder engagement, priorities identified by the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, and additional research, the Office of Energy, Justice, and Equity identified these 8 policy priorities to guide DOE implementation. Those are decreasing energy burden in disadvantaged communities, decreasing environmental exposure and burdens for disadvantaged communities, increasing parity in clean energy technology, energy democracy. Next slide, please. No, I'm frozen again. I'm going to try to join on my phone if that's possible. Just confirming I'm still frozen.
Right now.
Okay. Okay. I don't know what's happening. I'm so sorry about this. Okay. So next slide. Okay. So CBPs are applicable to really all selections from the bill and IRA funding opportunity announcements. I think our exception is the Office of Energy. Benefit plan. What were you saying? What are you committing to? And then, as I just wanted to be clear that the way the department is thinking about this, in addition to community benefits being the right thing to do, we also view them as a means to ensure that projects are actually developed. So we believe that obtaining long-term community support through meaningful two-way community engagement and binding agreements with community will reduce project risk. So does securing a stable workforce through agreements, wages, benefits, and local recruiting. Okay, I'm gonna try this again. Next slide, please. All right, this is a really big deal that I'm going to spend a lot of time on. So apologies for that. This is how we actually implement this work. So as mentioned, a lot of work goes into preparing what we call FOAs, these funding opportunity announcements. And they're specific to each of the provisions in the various acts. So for example, the Industrial Decarb Program has a specific FOA. They're very long, they're pretty detailed, they're highly technical. We're working on that and hopefully that will change in the future to be more accessible, but that's where they are now. And that FOA includes a lot of information for what the program really wants to see in terms of community benefits. Sometimes that's specific, and sometimes that's kind of more general around our 4 priorities and linking back to a community benefit plan template. So a lot of work goes into that. That is internal to the program. So, not a lot of opportunity for community engagement there. And again, I'm trying to kind of mark here which of these are really opportunities for community to engage and shape this process. So the project application. So applicants submit community benefit plans as part of their applications. And again, these are scored. They're 20% of the score. And we can get into this more detail, but one thing that we really look at quite carefully is what letters of support were provided for the project. Was there environmental justice and equity group support? Is there organized labor support? Do you have tribal support? And this is really an opportunity for the community to engage that a project or developer is applying for something. You don't know, but if you are reached out to, you should know, these are taken quite seriously. And it is really an opportunity to engage with the developer and share your concerns and needs. We ask a lot of questions about these letters of support and progress to getting new ones. Okay, so the next point is when project selection is announced. For each of the programs, there's some sort of public announcement that gets out there that usually includes some high-level details on the community benefits. And hopefully that provides, kind of some notice to labor partners, to local community, this project is moving forward. And it's a good time to engage with the developer. So the next is during our negotiation phase. So just to be clear, this is a negotiation between the developer and the Department of Energy. And during this negotiation, which could take 12 months, it can take a year and a half, they really work out the very detailed provisions in terms of their grant. And part of that is taking what might have been really like high-level commitments in the community benefit plan that was an application document and turning them into very specific commitments that actually can be used for accountability and provide real specific actions on what the developer will do. Once that award is completed, there's a document called the Community Benefits Outcome and Objectives, CBOO, and that is shared with the public. And that really provides the milestones towards meeting these various community benefit goals. We also have a second internal reporting tool called Community Benefit Reporting. So after the award, there's ongoing accountability on part of the department with the terms of the grants. And, the community benefits and the commitments in there are included in the grant's no-go milestones. Not all of them will be, but the major ones will be. And what that means is if the developer or grantee does not meet certain of these milestones, funding could presumably be cut off, just the way it could be if they don't meet other milestones around commercial development or such things. Okay, next slide, please. Great. So these are our 4 community benefit plan priorities or pillars. So the first is Justice 40. Will the project meet or exceed the objectives of the Justice 40 initiative that 40% of total benefits accrue to disadvantaged communities? The second is investing in quality jobs. Will the project create good paying jobs that are necessary to attract and retain skilled workers and ensure workers have a voice on the job over decisions that affect them? And then DEIA, is there equitable access to wealth building opportunities for underrepresented populations? Are there efforts to reduce barriers to jobs for local workers or underrepresented groups? And then the final is community and labor engagement. So we're really looking for meaningful two-way engagement with tribes, with community and labor, and commitment to incorporating the concerns that are raised through that engagement. We're also looking for, this is the place in which you could provide those formal enforceable agreements to deliver the benefits. So project labor agreements, community benefit agreements, collective bargaining agreements. Next slide, please. Great. So this is, I'll just be very quick in some of the examples that we see around these 4 commitments and some of the examples that might go into a CBP. So in the Justice 40 section, we're really asking for identification of applicable disadvantaged communities where the benefits will flow. We really want to see that the benefits are quantifiable, measurable, and trackable, including how these will meet each of the Justice 40 policy priorities we discussed earlier. We want to see as well how they will flow, and also what are the negative and cumulative impacts on disadvantaged communities. These are big projects. These will not only provide benefits, and it's important to have a real understanding of what those are. So some example commitments could see a commitment to provide subsidies for low-income customers for energy bills, community infrastructure improvements that are requested by the community. Those could be things like broadband, electricity, microgrids. We're seeing a lot of Justice 40 plans co-created with community. Opportunities for tribal or community ownership. So really wealth building through that ownership model. So microgrids, transmission infrastructure, other pieces like that. Revenue sharing opportunities and restoration or environmental cleanup that may be needed around the project site that communities have been dealing with for a long time. Next slide, please. All right, so this is the kind of commitments that we see and we provide examples of around diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And I bolded here how objectives will be incorporated into the project. This is important for all of our pillars, but I think specific for DEIA, want to see how this particular project in place is going to make change. So, a big commitment that a company has company-wide, we do this kind of training, probably less a commitment than we might want to see than some of these other pretty specific examples. So some examples are really kind of commitments to partnership in a real way or to contract with minority serving institutions, businesses majority owned or controlled by disadvantaged communities or underrepresented persons or group of underrepresented persons. So that's like that real like wealth building, like how can we really use these projects to create the transformational change on the ground. And then the second is really around making sure that these good jobs that are being created are really accessible to disadvantaged communities and local communities. Very often they are the same in our projects. But really, like making sure that the people that are hosting these projects are really kind of receiving those good jobs. And then we also are looking, provide examples of what, kind of workplace supports to make those jobs more accessible, be childcare, transportation, and then investments in apprenticeship programs that might provide an opportunity for local and disadvantaged communities that members that might otherwise not be kind of having access to these trades to get in there. Next slide, please. Great. So this is our last pillar, but in our CBP template, the first, and it's important for a few different ways. So what kind of examples we give in our template is around meaningful two-way engagement with labor unions, worker organizations, tribes, and community-based organizations. So again, this is the CBP template with application. It asks for letters of support. It also asks around plans to provide that support. What's the process of working with some of these key on the ground communities to get their support, to get their buy-in, and to understand and address their needs, as well as timelines. So this can also include descriptions of a mechanism for ongoing two-way engagement, such as a community advisory body, a strong community engagement plan. But again, this is a really good kind of opportunity for engagement. And the second, and this is, you know, kind of a lot of what I think we probably want to talk about today, or folks are interested in, is plans to negotiate formal workforce and community agreements. So these are agreements that Department of Energy is not a party to, but we encourage their use for a multitude of reasons. We think they help de-risk projects by building really lasting local support. We think they can help provide stable workforce, which is increasingly important. And they provide the mechanism to really like kind of developer to sit down with tribes and with local communities to understand their concerns and work with them to shape the benefits that really address their concerns and needs. Department of Energy is not local. We don't really know what the local community's needs are. We don't really know where there's a broadband need or childcare. And so this is a bit of a vacuum, and these engagement mechanisms are a way to inform that process through developer taking that role, either through that commitment to engagement or commitment to really kind of sit down and negotiate agreements. Next slide, please. Great. So here's the final section is investing in quality jobs. You know, really, this is very core to this work. It's important that the federal investment is, you know, leading to jobs that pay above average wages and benefits, that there's investments in workforce training to support a skilled workforce and provide pathways to advancement, that there is worker participation in workplace health and safety plan design, as well as, you know, I think recruiting practices that benefit the community, as we mentioned, project labor agreements, collective bargaining agreements, work to utilize registered apprentices and apprenticeships as a way to really kind of open up this workforce and make sure more folks have opportunities to these jobs. Next slide, please. All right, so this is another important but technical slide. I kind of just want to go over again these different components because it's a little bit tricky. So this is really our pathway for how we make these very broad pillars, these great things we want to see. How do we actually make them a reality through our process of essentially grants? So the first, as mentioned, is the community benefit plan. So that is an application document. It is not currently shareable with the community unless the developer or the applicant chooses to share that or they give permission. There's a lot of sensitivity around application documents. So why do we need this? So this supports really the applicant in documenting and thinking through their commitments. We create a standard CBP template as described, which kind of like supports how we evaluate and judge these CBPs and also provides kind of like the guidance for the developer. Our current draft provides a lot of specific examples. I went through a few of them. In the past, we did not have those examples and got much less quality plans. Okay, so the next, as I mentioned, is this community benefit outcomes and objectives, CBOO. So that's really like the high level summary of these commitments that will eventually come through the grant negotiation. This is after the community benefit plan is in place, after the project is selected. There's this long negotiation process, which includes community benefit terms. At the end of that, there's a huge long contract. This document, the CBU, is the short summary where the public and the agency can see these commitments, the timelines to meet them, and kind of provide that accountability to make sure that these goals and milestones are actually being met as part of the award. Again, this is a publicly shareable document, but we do not have many of them out yet. And then our last kind of way we have accountability is through a community benefit reporting. So that's actually an internal document that down the road, most likely we will use to provide kind of like aggregated data, but it's a template that provides us like the opportunity for that specific accountability. Next slide, please. This is just kind of a high level overview of like post-award, how community can shape this process. Again, we have the CBU, and once those are out there in the world, I really kind of highly encourage folks to be reading them and understanding them. We have negotiated agreements with, or we're encouraging the use of negotiated agreements with community as a counterparty. And we have a NEPA process, which will generally be triggered at the final award with a whole environmental review with opportunities to shape mitigation and monitoring measures. Next slide, please. Cool. So this, I wanted to talk a minute about, before I hand it off to Jeremiah, which is great, transparency. So a lot of this work really involves community being involved, being engaged, shaping the community benefits, creating the benefits they want to see. We have currently very little transparency, and so there's very little awareness of that. As mentioned, the community benefit plans are submitted at application and they're not publicly shareable unless the applicant proactively chooses to do so. The Department of Energy programs do provide a summary of fact sheet at selection, which includes those benefits with that in mind, but those can be quite high level. We're currently working on a public map, which will show the location of work, so where the project will actually be, and those key community benefits. Again, those are going to be pretty high level. So once the project is selected, the DO and the applicant, as mentioned, enter into negotiations, and the benefits and the CBP then are negotiated to these specific commitments. The CBU will be published and shared for almost all projects. Some projects have chosen to kind of continue a pathway of a full community benefit plan and use that tool. So those will also be publicly shared, and a few programs have been doing that already. And then Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations publishes very detailed fact sheets on community benefits as their version of the CBU. And that's also linked there. All right, so I think I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jeremiah, who hopefully can be on camera. And just kind of as part of a transition, we really want to recognize that in addition to transparency and understanding actually what's happening to engage, you also need a ton of resources and capacity. These projects are all moving really quickly. It is very hard to keep track of them and to have the capacity to engage with, really kind of well-resourced developers. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeremiah to share a little bit about his work and capacity building efforts at the department.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to not take the risk of turning my camera on. I do want to say just very quickly that I am also a resident of the city of Houston. So for those of y'all Houstonians that are on this line, in case you didn't hear yet, the cooling centers around the city of Houston have been opened. You can Google City of Houston Office of Emergency Management, and it'll take you to the website where you can find out where those cooling centers are and some tips to stay cool, because we are, as y'all know, if you're here, 100-degree heat index is not something to take lightly. But again, just want everyone to let everyone know, I hope you all were safe during the hurricane, and your loved ones as well. and just be careful as we're transitioning and folks are getting power back. And speaking of transitions, I do want to talk about why I'm here today, which is to talk about some resources. And first and foremost, the Office of Community Engagement, of which I am a member. So OCE, which is a shorthand for Office of Community Engagement, was established at the request of the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, about a year ago, actually, a year and 2 months ago, if I'm being exact. And it's related to what Sarah was mentioning earlier, all that one-time funding opportunity that came through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act. Typically, the Department of Energy interacted with developers and state energy offices. With all of these new programs that came out, the DOE recognized the need to have OCE as a front door for community members, for nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations, and disadvantaged communities to be able to keep track of some of these opportunities that are coming out. Because frankly, y'all have full-time jobs. You do not have the capacity to just stay on our website and keep hitting refresh and learn what those new hubs and opportunities are. And so that's where we step in. We help connect you to the Department of Energy's program offices, to subject matter experts, whatever you need to advance your clean energy goals. And here on the bottom of the slide, you can see our hotline, our Get Engaged general mailbox, and our LinkedIn account, which we do post pretty much every day. And as you transition to the next slide, what you'll see is that we are also place-based. So my colleagues who are also engagement specialists are throughout the country. I have the southern region, which includes Texas through Florida, and then Texas going on up through Nebraska. I don't know why Nebraska is considered part of the South. I didn't make the map. That's just how it is. But you can see here, I know this is broader than just Texas. I know there's folks from across the country here. You can directly connect with your engagement specialist and start off by having that conversation where we'll walk through what are your clean energy goals, and then hopefully connect you to the programs, the capacity building, the technical tools that you need to take charge of your clean energy transition. So that's Office Community Engagement in a nutshell. As we move on to the next slide, I want to share a couple of programs. So just very briefly, again, this is only a snippet of the 100 billion portfolio. There's plenty of other programs within the Department of Energy around solar, EV, workforce development, everything that needs to happen for a clean energy transition. So please don't hesitate to reach out to your OCE engagement specialist if you'd like to learn more. What we're looking at here is the RAMP Fellowship. And what RAMP stands for is right here on the left, Community Workforce Readiness Accelerator for Major Projects. I know there's a community workforce. I don't quite know how the RAMP acronym came from, but that's what it stands for. And most importantly, though, this is a brand new fellowship opportunity within the Department of Energy with 3 main goals. Build local capacity. So this program will support 10 RAMP fellows over 2 years. They will be embedded in the community. They'll come from a wide range of backgrounds, but they will be leaders within their local community. Their goal will be to facilitate partnerships within their community that they're in. And they will work to convene labor community workforce collaboratives within 10 target geographies within the Department of Energy. These target geographies are going to be where the DOE is investing large amounts of public tax dollars for clean energy infrastructure and energy transition. Houston being one of those target areas. And they will also take the lead on technical assistance in education. Provide educational workshops on what a clean energy workforce looks like in their local communities. So I will put the link in the chat so you can learn more about the RAMP program. Right now the application for that is actually closed. It closed June 30th. And so the next stage will be when we're able to allow the 10 fellows. But we are going to move to a program that is open at the moment as we go on to the next slide. And that's READY, which stands for Regional Energy Democracy Initiative. And what this program is doing is helping to build the capacity of localities along the Gulf Coast to take charge around clean benefit, the benefits plans that Sarah spoke about. You can see the target areas that we're looking at here when we say the Gulf Coast. So we're talking about the Corpus Christi area, which is where I am from, where I'm born and raised, Houston, where I'm living now, and Port Arthur, Lake Charles, Louisiana, and the river parishes. And so as we move on to the next slide to continue talking about READY, what READY is going to do again is centered around the community benefits plans and their development and implementation. You can see here on this left column a focus for arming communities around implementation for not only current awards, but forthcoming awards. As Sarah mentioned, it takes a long time to negotiate those out. I won't read all that text here, but again, this is going to be based around capacity building for communities to take charge of in their role for community benefits development. So moving on to the next slide, a little more information on who can actually apply for the READY program. You can see that graphic here on the right. The application is set up to be a consortium of one lead agency. Excuse me, just 1 second. Sorry, y'all. Didn't cough for the entire presentation, had to cough just then. So going back to that graphic on the right, for the READY program, it will be one lead consortium. It's a consortium with one lead agency applying. We're recommending a minority serving institution as a lead organization. Does not have to be, that is just a recommendation, but that consortium will take lead in convening workforce labor groups, legal support services that will act as technical assistance arms, economic development entities within the organizations, and at least 2 to 3 community-based organizations within the that community. And as we move on to that next slide, here are the meat and potatoes, right? So what is READY actually going to deliver to communities? So the awardees will be centered around consortia-led convenings, making sure that key community and local partners identify again what that community needs for the clean energy transition and what they would like to see out of the investments and benefits that come out of these funding opportunities. They'll provide a regional benefit strategy that makes sure to identify public policy priorities, analysis of the specific industries within that region, and the greatest potential for economic development and community identified benefits. Importantly, you'll also develop a public-facing dashboard to help community members actually keep track of projects in that region. Again, the DOE is investing a lot in these individual regions along the Gulf Coast, so having a public-facing dashboard is important for folks to take leadership of that. The consortium will provide bi-monthly briefings and reports on the convenience to DOE, create a framework for benefits and measuring and tracking across the DOE, and importantly, draft an annual report to help keep everyone updated on what's going on. And we can move on to the next slide. So the READY timeline just opened in late May. There was an informational webinar on the website that is recorded, and we are actually going to start touring some of these areas, target areas in the next few weeks. So when you see that July 2024 third row, we do have specific information on that now. So July 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th, we will be in different locations. I'm actually putting the link in the chat where you can register and join us in person and meet not only the program staff in charge of READY, but other DOE program offices. So on July 15th, we'll be in Corpus Christi from 5:30 to 8. July 16th, we'll be in Houston at the A-Leaf Neighborhood Center, all times 5:30 through 8. July 17th, we'll be in 2 different locations. We will be in Sulphur, Louisiana, and Port Arthur. And on July 18th, we will be at the Historic Riverlands in Reserve, Louisiana. The link I put in the chat is a registration link with the addresses of where we will be. So the actual deadline to apply for the READY program will be July 31st at 3 p.m. Eastern Time or 2 p.m. Central. And we're looking to have the consortium selected in September with kickoff events in October. Again, very quickly for a federal program. And then we can move on to the next slide. Just wrapping up the totality, some resources and contact information. You can see the contact information for RAMP, OCE, ready, and Sarah here as well, as well as direct links to some of that information we went over in the last 50 minutes together. So that takes us to the end of our slide deck, and I think we have some time for Q&A from anyone in the audience. Is that right? Yes, we still have some time. So hopefully there's some
Yes.
questions in the chat.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Thank you, Sarah, for a very comprehensive presentation and discussion around how Department of Energy is integrating and the community benefits framework within this set of federal resources, investments, and incentives. We do have a set of questions that we're sharing in advance by some of our members and coalition partners. We will, I'm gonna, before we get into the questions, and I apologize for the background noise a little bit if you hear. Before we get into the questions, I also, as I mentioned in the beginning, part of the original agenda for the webinar was to also have Tom Lewis, Senior Program Manager for the Blue Green Alliance, which is a national organization that works within the intersections of climate, environment, workforce development and labor, with a strong emphasis on workforce development and labor, and creating opportunities for a strong workforce within the clean energy transition. So Tom Lewis was going to join the session and speak a little bit about their perspective on how to take advantage and help support the community benefits within renewable energy deployment. Unfortunately, he's also based in Houston, and after what happened yesterday and continues to happen, he's unable to join. So we wanted to mention that as well, and we will make sure to follow up with Tom and Blue Green Alliance to share a bit more about that perspective later. So now I'm gonna start with some questions. You give me 1 second. And the first question is for Sarah, also not only from your current role at DOE, but your previous experience within this space, and as a legal experience and expertise. Can you share a little bit more about, based on your experience, can you tell us more about the differences between community benefit plans and that transition from a community benefit plan to a community benefit agreement? What are the things that, for the audience, that are important to highlight that separate those two components?
Cool. Thanks, Carlos. So yeah, a community benefit plan is really a DOE term of art. So it's an application development document that's submitted by the developer as part of an application to DOE. So we hope that what is in that document is really kind of informed by meaningful outreach and engagement with community, labor, tribes, and including obtaining their support and the commitments that are laid out in that community benefit plan reflect that. But in essence, it is just an application document. It doesn't continue on. Once it is negotiated, once negotiations start, that document is really kind of used as a start for negotiations. But there's not really kind of an opportunity to bring in community into that particular document and process unless the developer has proactively done that in either engagement or otherwise in their application. So a community benefit agreement is different because in this, Department of Energy is not a party to it. So that's really an agreement between community groups and the developer. And really, to be successful, these work if there's a really diverse coalition of groups and representatives that can represent and speak for their community, their interests, and have their trust. These really kind of intersect in that in our community benefit plan, we list as examples, and I think we really kind of encourage use of community benefit agreements for a few different reasons. They bring a lot of value in that they are enforceable by the community, not by Department of Energy. They provide that negotiating space for community themselves to identify and articulate the benefits and needs that they want to see out of the project. And that can be, through a community fund where there's a steering committee that might, indicate what the funds could be used for. And also an independent governance structure that's really kind of community driven that comes out of that plan. It's also a great forum for conflict resolution. And from a developer's perspective, and also part of DOE's perspective, is it provides certainty that there will be support of key community groups through what might be a really complicated permitting process, particularly for some of our big development projects. So based on my professional experience, it's pre-DOE, it's really great when agencies can kind of set these requirements, or in the case of DOE, kind of encouragements. We're really starting to see more of that through local government ordinances, through Bureau of Ocean Energy Management's bid process. And that is really great because it helps create that construct to really get developer to the table with community. However, I think as Jeremiah really articulated, it takes an incredible amount of capacity for communities to engage. So all that work of articulating priorities, building the coalition, translating all that work into concrete terms, negotiating, creating a legal agreement, we're for the most part not providing. Ready is an example to that, but we want to recognize that, we're kind of setting up, we're hoping to set up that opportunity, but there's a lot of work after that.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. We have, and then follow-up question around that. Within the agreement, established agreement between the developer, the applicant, and then award, like the recipient of the federal resources, grants, etc., and Department of Energy within that agreement, which enforcement mechanisms does Department of Energy have in place to assure that the recipient of these resources meets its community benefits milestones through the project, through the stages of the project implementation, planning, implementation, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like one of the really kind of smart things about this process, which I joined recently, so I have no role in. But really what happens is the community benefit commitments are included as terms in the final award. So that's really the grant that between Department of Energy and the company that really kind of governs the funding over the life of that. So, there's different terms, what we kind of call go, no-go criteria. And community benefits are often part of those no-go criteria, or they're otherwise in there. And we hope by incorporating them into the terms of the grant, they're treated as other commitments that might be made from the developer. And, similar to other commitments, if they're not met, that could be a breach, and actions we put into place primarily would be halting funding.
Thank you. Thank you. And then last question that we have within the time that we have now, is there an idea in terms of like what's the overall implementation timeline for these set of projects that have been announced, that have received funding from DOE? And then when do we expect to see some measurable results from the project's deliverables around the community benefits commitments?
I mean, that's such a huge and variable question. Most of our projects are in the award negotiation right now. So there are relatively few that have gotten to award. Most of them are in this critical time right now. And it really varies on the type of project. Like there's these big demonstration deployment projects, there's smaller R&D projects, but some of the work you might want to see first at the front end is things like building out community advisory bodies, funding that sort of work, the work of sitting down with labor and with community partners to talk about what an agreement might look like. Those are probably some of the first things that would come out.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? Last thoughts before we close out this session? Sarah, Jeremiah. Again, thank you, Sarah, Jeremiah, for detailed and comprehensive presentation and discussion on the community benefits framework, coming from a lot of these IRA federal resources available. We don't have time for questions from the live audience right now, but we do encourage you, please follow up follow up with Hannah and all in staff to share your questions and your comments. This is one of hopefully several different types of sessions and in-person events that we want to plan and facilitate to make sure that both private sector, nonprofits, community-based organizations, community leaders, in collaboration with federal, state, and local governments, are working together and helping make sure that we successfully operationalize and support the successful delivery of community benefits with a prioritization on delivering benefits for what the federal government has identified as disadvantaged communities. So we thank you all for making time to be with us. We will share more information in the near future. We are, as I mentioned, mindful of the fact that we are missing a lot of important folks that we wanted to have join this session, and we will make sure to share this information with them. And we will announce a date for an in-person event in Houston to continue this conversation and have a deeper dive conversation around how to strengthen and better align climate and environmental justice objectives within community benefit requirements and this community benefit framework. So we are looking forward to that. And again, thank you all. Thanks, speakers, the participants, the audience, and have a great rest of your day. I appreciate it.